So this video, I'd like to show you how to generate some NURBS surfaces from your curves. For this first project, we will be creating 3 different scenes to generate 3 compositions that are dynamic that use, NURBS surfaces. I have here, there's some kind of primitive NURBS shapes here that you're welcome to use or try to manipulate and play with. But I really would also like to see you generating some more organic forms with curves. Let's go ahead and to start, we will drop in an EP curve. And so to generate a surface from this curve, I'm going to be using the tools here under surfaces for create. In order to be able to use this first one, which is Loft, I need 2 curves. And I can do this by generating 2 curves, or I can offset this curve and select both of these curves, and then I can go up to surfaces and say Loft. And what that will do is that will build a surface relationship between those 2 curves. You can see in my outliner here that both of those curves are still objects in the scene, and then the surface becomes a 3rd object. So what that means is I'm still able to change some of the values here for the curves, and it will affect the surface. For instance, I can move the, I can change the offset of this curve, and it will change the appearance of the surface. Now you see when this looks like the number 3. When I go in the opposite direction, it's turning black, and I can kind of get into that. Maybe I'll just quickly mention it now. There's only one side of the surface that retains material and lighting information. And this is just to cut down on render time and processing. So going backwards means I've just kind of flipped that curve the other way. So that when you see a black surface, this doesn't retain any rendering information, but on this side it will, okay? So that's Loft. I also can use Loft with 2 different curves that have a different shape to them. And select both of these and say Loft, right? So now we've lofted between them. They also don't have to be flat, right? If I go to this curve and let's go to its edit points and start to edit. The shape of both of these curves in the, I'm upside down here. The shape of these curves in the Y direction, let's say, and then I can select both curves and hit Loft, right? And now it will create a more 3-dimensional form. That's kind of a nice form. And again, these curves are responsive. The surface is responsive to the curve. So if I move the curve, it'll move the surface. I did want to mention that we can, at this point, maybe turn off the grid, if that would be helpful when you're looking at your objects. Just so you know, that's this icon here to turn on and off the grid. Another way, which turning off the grid when you're creating curves might not be the best idea. Let's go ahead and, now that I have this big object here, I can move my surface away from my curves if I want to, but I can still manipulate the curves and it will manipulate that surface. Might be a good idea now to maybe hide the visibility of the curves, keep them in my outliner so I can still reference them, but maybe go here and turn them off by hitting 0 visibility. Now they're off. Now I just have my surface. Okay. Let's go ahead and generate more. You see here in the outliner that they've grayed out, so that means that they're not visible, but they're still objects in the scene. I can just go here and turn their visibility back on by hitting 1 if I want. Okay, go back to off. Let's generate another curve and create a surface a different way. This method, next method here is planar. And in order to use planar, I need a closed curve. So if I go and try this, it will give me an error. Curve must be closed for self-intersecting. So I need to select this curve first and say open, close. And now, because I already did that surface, that I already did the planar, now you can see I have my planar surface. Let's just show you that again. Go ahead, create a curve. Close it. Nothing was, it's got to be closer than that to close. That's not what the problem is. The problem is that I need to finish creating the curve. I need to have the curve object selected and then go to open, close. And now, okay, I can go to surfaces and say planar, right? Now it will create that curve. But for planar, the minute that this curve is no longer flat, that planar is broken. So planar is really only just to create a flat surface. So using something like Loft. So to manipulate this planar surface, I'm going to use the control vertices of the surface points. Right? And so now I can manipulate the way that this surface looks. Okay. If I move the curve, I'm also going to move the surface that's attached to it. Okay, but I can move the surface independent of the curve. So then I'm going to go again and go to my curve here and I'm just going to hide it so it's not visible in the scene. Okay, another way to generate surfaces is by using Revolve. So to use Revolve, I'm actually going to first build my curve in the orthographic on the front view. And let me, while I'm here, move these out of the way. And let's go ahead and create a kind of surface. So Revolve there's my curve. Revolve is going to, you only need one curve for it. And let's go back to my perspective view. Now I have my curve here, and relative to the origin of the scene, if I go to Revolve, it's going to generate the form as it revolves around the origin. So it's going to basically kind of create it's going to continue that curve that I generated within the 3D as a 3D object revolving in the y-axis around the center of the origin of the scene. So if I move this curve out, you'll see that I'm kind of changing the shape of it. And again, I have this, there's one surface that has material information on it and lighting information. And so if I want that to be on the exterior, not the interior, I can go to surfaces and say reverse direction, and that will change the direction. Now there's a way to make this more of a 3D object and have some depth here. There's no depth. This is paper thin or less than paper thin. It's as thin as you could possibly get for a surface, a mesh, not a mesh, excuse me, a NURBS surface. But if you built some dimension to this object, which is something we can talk about a little bit later, then you're able to see, both sides, the inside and the outside, that will both retain material information. I'm going to turn this off. The reason I'm turning them off and not deleting them is so that I can manipulate the curves if I want to adjust the surfaces that are attached to them. So the next tool will be BiRail, and this is kind of like Loft, but it gives you even more specificity to what the surface that you're creating. So for the BiRail tool, BiRail 1, you just need 2 curves. And let's see, let's go to our I believe you just need 2. By rail 1 tool, and it says down in the help what to do. You select your curves, and so select the second rail. So I want to select both of these and hit return, I believe. See our options. Select 2 rail curves. Oh, okay, so I need, I think, 2 profile curves and 2 rail curves. So in order to use by rail, I basically am going to be able to generate a really complex shape. And this will bring me to using these tools here, which I've hidden. They're there, I haven't hidden them, which are the snap functions. So I'm going to snap to curve, or snap to curve here, and to generate my next curve tool, right? So what this allows me to do is I'm snapping to the curve here in order to generate the point of my, I'm snapping to a different curve in order to generate my next curve. And this is important because I need 2 rails by rail 1. So I need a rail. So I'm to use the by rail tool. I have this profile curve, and let me manipulate this a little bit. What the by rail tool does is, oh, I still have this on. Once I'm done creating my profile curve, I'm just going to turn this off. So I'm not still snapping to other curves. And so what I'm going to do is, with this object selected, this curve object selected, I'm going to say surfaces by rail 1. And now it says select 2 rail curves. And now what it's done is it's kind of lofted this curve along these other 2 rail curves. Then again, I might want to do something like reverse direction to get that surface on the outside. So now I'm creating like more complex organic shapes. Again, I can manipulate just the curve itself in order to manipulate my surface. And I can use functions like, let's see what happens if I smooth this curve, right? I can do things like smooth. Maybe that's too much of a smoothing. Let's go to my options for smooth. Let's do a smooth factor of 3. Maybe smooth it even more, who knows? But I'm able to perform curve operations that will affect the look of my surface. Okay, so I can also, maybe move this particular, oh, I can't move it because I don't want to break the connection there. I can't move the start and end curves in a by rail, but I can select the other points and I can move those. That will manipulate the shape. And I'd have to select both of these curves and then go to the edit points. I don't know if I can do that necessarily. I can maybe go back to snap to curve here and join those back up. So those are some options for generating surfaces using by rail. And then by rail 2 and 3 is kind of similar. Generate a curve. I'm going to generate 2 rail curves here. By rail 2, snap to curve, and it's only going to snap to curve if you're within a particular distance of it. In this case, I'm actually going to, let's see, it's always going to just kind of draw my curve in flat on the curve on the grid here. So I can kind of maybe draw this and select these points, move them. Or I can work with different orthographic views. Here's another curve. This might be a bit extreme to create a surface from. But for BiRail 2, I'm going to basically generate 2 profile curves to run along the rail curve. So let's go from that to maybe just a flat curve on the other side. And now again, I'm going to select, let's see what it asks for. If I go to surfaces and say BiRail tool, it says select 2 profile curves. So I'll select these 2 profile curves. And now it says select 2 rail curves. I'm looking down here at the help bar. Select 2 rail curves. If I drag my mouse, it'll marquee select. Okay, so now I have this form's been created. BiRail 3 means that you are, or 3 plus, means that you're just creating more curves along in between these rail curves to generate your surface from.